I'm Rae Benjamin, and this is the In the Cut podcast, where professional screenwriters go to break down their favorite episodes of TV. This is it. This is our final episode of this season. We've discussed a bunch of Emmy-winning classics, even had a few Emmy-winning writers on the show. What better way to end this season than to discuss absolute Emmy juggernaut, The Bear?
We in the cut.
The Bear is a half-hour show from FX set in a Chicago restaurant. It follows Carmy Brizzato, a talented but anxious chef who's taken over the family restaurant after the tragic death of his brother. The Bear has been an Emmy favorite since its debut, winning numerous awards and holds a record for most wins by a comedy series in a single year. Forks is the 7th episode of The Bear's second season. It breaks format to focus on a supporting character, Richie. He's sent to stage, aka intern, at a Michelin-starred restaurant where he wakes up at the crack of dawn to polish, you guessed it, forks. This episode was filmed at the Young Musicians Foundation, which provides tuition-free arts education. To donate or learn more, visit ymf.org. And here to help me serve this exquisite dish is the lovely Aeryn Michelle Williams. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, you're a writer. You've been on The Umbrella Academy on Netflix, HARLEM on Amazon Prime. You are a chameleon of stories, can write in a variety of genres. And also, I met you at Troy and Alicia's wedding, who were guests on the last season of the podcast.
Yes, so. Good friends of mine.
Yes, us too, you know. We love them. We love the podcast. So before we get started talking about The Bear, we're going to play this game called Fade In, Fade Out. Basically, I'm just going to give you some rapid fire statements related to the culinary world of The Bear. Okay. And if you're here for it, you're going to say fade in. Not here for it, fade out. So all right. Here's your little card. Let's go. Checking Yelp reviews before eating out anywhere.
Fade in.
I agree. You know, for me, 4 stars and above, no less.
Oh, wow, 4 stars. Yelp is not my choice of review, but yes, definitely.
Where do you go?
Well, I use like Infatuation LA.
Oh, so you're a real one.
Yeah, I like to look at their reviews for
real high
for
class.
new restaurants.
I agree.
Yeah.
Electric stoves.
Fade in because I have something to say.
Oh, wow.
I have a story about it. Now, I feel like all of us learned that like gas is better. And I have always felt that way, but I learned that the only reason we think that way is because of lobbyists.
Oh.
Because the gas company wanted people to continue to use gas instead of electric.
Wow.
And so they had a lot of lobbyists in like politics to
Really?
to sway our minds to think that
gas.
You're gonna go with gas.
As someone who's had both, I feel like it doesn't cook evenly. But you know,
I get it.
You're probably right. You know, save the environment or whatever.
I get it.
Dropping like $200 for a Le Creuset pot. Are you here for that?
Oh, I'm gonna go fade out if I can try to find something that's the same or like a knockoff that's cheaper.
Or like a used one. I'm gonna say fade in because like you can keep them forever. Not that I would do it. I don't own one, but like if I got like one on sale or cheap, it's like an heirloom. I literally have pots that my grandmother used 50, 60 years ago because they're well made. So.
My mom really wants one, and eventually I will try to get her one.
You'll get her one. Yeah. They have a sale, girl. Wearing an apron to cook.
Fade in. I don't do it, but I think you should.
Yeah, I'm not against it. It's just I don't own an apron.
I do own an apron. I've been gifted one, and you should because I splatter stuff on me all the time.
That's true. And it's cute too. How about a $30 Erewhon smoothie? Here for it?
Here's the thing.
Like it.
Here's the thing.
Fade in.
It's a fade in, fade out. I don't know, but have I done it? Yes.
Hey, we're all guilty.
I don't know if I spent $30, but it was definitely 20. It was definitely 20.
They are good. They are good. I got one on sale. They do like promos sometimes.
Yes.
So I got like the Hacks one when they were promoting Hacks.
Wow.
It was
I didn't
only
know about that.
$4. Delicious.
I didn't know about that.
Okay, so moving in to The Bear. What made you want to choose this episode of The Bear Forks to talk about on the podcast?
I think Forks is one of their best episodes, simply because of the arc of the character that it focuses on, Richie. Richie starts off in season 1 as a very unlikable, he's lovable, but he's very unlikable character. And by the time we get to Forks, it's like it's just his big moment of change, and I think we really live for that in storytelling, when like a character is like one way, and then you just see how they change, and you see their struggle, and then you get this really big payoff when they finally go like, see, I knew you could do it, I knew you could be better.
Yeah.
And so that's why I chose Forks.
Honestly, I was gonna say the same thing. Richie in season 1 is sort of like an antagonist, honestly, for Carmi.
Yeah.
He's always just undermining Carmi,
Yes.
trying to set him up, and this episode is really, like you said, a turning point for this character.
Yeah, I call it, it's the Karate Kid episode, really.
Oh, wax on, wax off.
Yes, yeah.
I didn't think of that as actually a great comparison.
Yeah, he gets Miyagi'd.
So The Bear does a lot of these sort of special POV episodes where we are leaving the restaurant and going to follow this one character. Why do you think this format works so well for The Bear?
I think, well, what attracts me to it is like, I love the restaurant scenes and the sort of tension of them, but when you get to go out and kind of explore the backstory and or a present day struggle that the character is going through, I feel like it illuminates how they then work within that kitchen team or within that restaurant sort of like force. That's why I really love season 2 of The Bear, because we get to do that with those characters. And when we meet them in season 1, you know, they've all worked in the kitchen. We're kind of getting bits and pieces about who they are, but it's really focused on Carmi, Mikey, Sydney. And then season 2 really that's when I began to love the show, when I got to see like these characters go off on, I guess, like side quests in a way to really get underneath like who they are as characters. I think that exists in a lot of the best shows that exist, where you get, you have this big ensemble cast, but then you get to go and like spend time with 1 or 2 people, and then you get really in depth.
Yeah, I agree. I think season 1 of The Bear almost feels like the whole season sort of the pilot, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah, because you don't really get to the end episode that, this is The Bear, and this is what it's going to be.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I really enjoyed season 2. Now, this episode, Forks, has a really solid 3-act structure, actually, which I personally enjoy. I'm a sort of a structure fiend. So we start with the cold open, and it's this interview with Coach K, who's, from Chicago. The Bears in Chicago, and if you don't know, he's an Olympics and NCAA winning, championship basketball coach, and he's talking about sort of teamwork, leadership.
Yeah.
How do you think this scene really sets the stage for Richie's transformation?
Yeah, well, Richie's not a team player, and several of the characters in The Bear can slip in and out of team playing, but Richie's not really a team player, and I think obviously through the course of the episode he joins a team and really begins to go, this is what it feels like to like work in tandem with people and not be an antagonist. But I think also from the cold open, there's a line that Coach K says about good leadership is pushing people to their limits and or pushing them beyond their limits. And I think that's a really central part of what happens with Richie too. Is because he goes to stage at this restaurant, and they have him shining forks for like presumably the first week. But it's a limit test, right? Like, will he push past his own ego, push past his own, self-loathing and whatnot to like really invest himself in something. And I feel like that's a really key part too of the cold open about like, good leadership is, and that's what Carmi's kind of doing with each of the characters throughout season 1, like sending them off onto these like really big journeys where like they are failing, where the stakes are very high. And, but they're, in a way, it's like because Carmi trusts that they'll be able to do it. And I think that's like the Coach K part of the episode that like really like locks in for me.
Yeah, I thought there was actually a sort of Easter egg in there that I didn't realize. So having finished season 4, the most recent season of The Bear.
I have not finished it yet. So I'm in my rewatch right now.
We'll discuss that later. But rewatching season 2 this episode, and as you said, a lot of what Coach K is talking about is leadership. Yeah. And I noticed they're showing Sydney the entire time and not Carmi. And that's sort of an Easter egg. I'm not going to spoil it for you. But it's sort of an Easter egg for what happens in season 4 that I didn't realize until rewatching this. I'm like, oh,
interesting. Because going back to rewatch it, I thought I remembered what the cold open was, but then when I watched it, I was like, oh, it's different. And then I also was like, oh, this is interesting that we're showing Sydney right now. That like Sydney's like, trying to create a new dish, or, as she always is. And I did find that interesting, so now I'm very excited to see what happens in season 4.
You'll see it pays off.
Because Coach K is kind of her thing.
Yes, she's reading the book
and everything.
Yeah,
so.
Okay, it makes sense. So then we sort of move into Act 1, which is Richie's story. Yeah. We set his goal, which is, as he said, complete his stage at Ever. And we see sort of the obstacles. A lot of them are largely like self-inflicted obstacles. Yeah. He finds it boring. He thinks it's mundane. He thinks it's beneath him. But what I love about the bear in this episode is sort of the repeated visual of him waking up and seeing the alarm clock. Yeah. So what message is conveyed when you see Richie wake up, and each time it's just a few minutes earlier we see that same alarm clock?
Yeah, well, I mean, the bear's motif is time.
It is.
And I think I really love that because time is like kind of its own character. Like Carmi's always trying to perfect the time it takes, from the dish to be cooked to get to the table and everything. And several Bear episodes open on an alarm clock, like, and it's different people, and it's always like, but I think it sort of represents, at least for Richie, his laziness or like his not really caring, even though he's, probably not a guy who wakes up at like 5:30 to like get prepared for the day. But I think as he begins to change over the course of the episode, he becomes more invested. There's a scene that he has with the young guy, Garrett, and where he tells him just like, you don't have to like it here, but like show me some respect and have respect for yourself. And I think that moment really lands on him. And I think like Richie has been sort of in a funk, like there is a lot happening for him, like a lot of change, so season 1 you have Mikey's death, which is like really big, and then he's separated from his wife. He's like trying to connect with his child, and Chicago itself is changing, and Richie's not a guy who likes a lot of change. He wants everything to stay the same, but like everything around him is like, so either he's got to change with it or he's going to get left behind. And I feel like over the course of that episode, seeing him wake up early, seeing him clean his apartment, seeing him, put on the suit and not look schlubby, like it is, indicative of that character making changes in his life. And I feel like that's also why like it's such a rewarding episode.
Yeah, and every time we see that alarm clock, he is waking up a few minutes early, which shows, like you said, that he is starting to change. He's starting to respect himself. And I think it's a great example of using visual storytelling. Like, we don't have a scene where Richie actually says, I'm waking up early.
It's just like we see it. I mean, the whole thing of every second counts, which is like on the wall at the Bear, but also I love that you get to see where Carmi comes from. And so there is a sign on the wall at Ever, just for the audience, that says, every second counts. And so I think that is also like thematically tied to him waking up earlier and earlier, because every second of the day counts. And
yeah. And we sort of get, it's sort of like a Groundhog's Day montage of Richie just waking up miserable, hating his life. But what I like is that it's intercut with the team back at the Bear and also the team at Ever. And they're all waking up at the same time as Richie, but they're doing their work with passion, they're doing these elaborate dishes and they're all happy to be there, whereas Richie is doing something much easier, to be honest. He's just cleaning forks. He's not asked to do these elaborate things that early, and he is just very miserable until that scene you said with Garrett, where Garrett is sort of fed up with his half-assing, pulls him to the side and is like, you need to respect yourself, like you said. How do you think that scene really lands on Richie? Because that's the first time, as you said, that his character changed. Why do you think that respect word sort of held power for him?
So I want to say, and I hope I'm right, because that scene is coupled with another very important scene, which is the phone call with his ex-wife. And so, he says, Garrett says to him, you don't have to like it here, but you got to at least do respect. And Richie says, I can do respect. Which means he's saying, okay, I'm not buying into this. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid, as I think that's an actual line he says. But I will respect that I'm here, mostly because he doesn't want Carmi to win. We're still in this part where it's not really that Richie's invested, but mostly that he can't give Carmi the satisfaction of him quitting. And so he's still kind of in that space. And I think also something Garrett says, he says something like that we get to make people happy. They get to spend their money here, and it's not just some elitist restaurant where it's for snobs. We actually want to make people, everyone, feel just give them pleasure for the 2 hours that they're here. And I think that also really lands with Richie. Richie is a people person, and I think right now he thinks that this restaurant's snobby, it's elitist. But then when they do the scene where they're doing the people of note, and they're like, oh, we got a Congress person coming and blah, blah, blah. But then they talk about those two teachers who have saved up all this money to come to this restaurant. And the guy says we're not even going to charge them. And I think that really lands on Richie. And it's oh, it's not actually, what I thought it was. This hospitality means something. So I do think, those ideas are working about in his head. Now, the scene that's coupled with is he has this phone call with his ex-wife, who essentially tells him that she's gotten engaged to someone else. And what I love about this scene visually is that he's holding his cell phone with his left hand, and you can still see that he wears his wedding ring. And so I felt that was such an intentional choice, because he could have held it with his right hand, but it's very prominent that he's still wearing it. And then the intercut with his ex-wife, she's also wearing her new engagement ring, and it's a huge rock. And so I think just that moment of having to hear that everything's changing, and either I'm going to change with it or I'm going to get left behind. And I feel that's I think that those two scenes coupled together really push Richie to all right, I'm going to invest in this. I'm going to invest really in myself, not even necessarily in the restaurant.
That's amazing you said that, because I actually read the script for this episode, which, if you don't know, listeners, viewers, it sometimes can be hard to find scripts that are not pilot episodes online. But because this episode was, campaigned for the Emmys, it was actually just on the Disney website. I Googled it and I looked it, and so I read the script. And in the script, actually, that scene was not placed there. It was earlier. And so when I read the script, I was like, I wonder why they recut it this way. And I actually preferred the script more, but now actually listening to your explanation, you've convinced me. I'm like, oh, I see why they cut it that way.
That's really interesting. Now I need to go read the script. I mean, I love that. What we write is not always how it ends up. And sometimes it's this scene is stronger motivation for the rest of it. That's a really interesting point.
And so I always try to read the scripts of the episodes just to see how things were different. But that's a great point. So in Act 2, after this sort of conversation with Garrett, as you mentioned, he's more engaged, he's more respectful. As a writer, we're always told to show, not tell.
Yeah.
How do you think that scene where Richie goes and gets the pizza for the guests at the restaurant, how does that show his sort of transformation?
Yeah, well, he's there's a couple moments that lead up to that where like he's getting into it. I don't remember the young woman's name who does all the calling off of the numbers and
her name too. She's in the show.
Yes, she's in the show, but he's really excited about it and watching like how this, and going back to the Coach K moment about teamwork, watching the teamwork of like it's like military style in there, like everyone is on point, and I think he's starting to be like, oh shit, put me in, coach, right? Like that's like the moment, and I think he's been wanting to take out dishes, like he keeps asking, and they're like, no, someone else. And in that moment, I think it's just really interesting because it's the deep dish representative of Chicago, which he clearly really loves. There's many shots with him just wearing like Chicago Bulls gear and things like that. And clearly it's like, wow, these people have not had deep dish, so the chef's gonna make it, and they're like, no, you're gonna go get it. And he like runs out and does it. And I think it's that moment of like what Garrett talked about, hospitality and bringing people joy, and like seeing the look on their faces to go like, you went that extra mile just to make me feel special. I think that is, I think that's the show don't tell of that moment is like, you can see it. He wants to hand deliver it. He still is cursing and whatnot throughout. He's not the greatest front of house person, but you can see how easily he can connect with people and like just bringing that piece of Chicago, I think, and being a part of the team to like do that moment just really visually shows that like Richie is like, he's got some buy-in and he's changed.
Yeah, I agree. I love that moment. And it sort of sets up the Richie that we see in more recent seasons where he does take it seriously.
Yeah.
He's all about service.
Yes.
And it does some foreshadowing, like he becomes that woman that's sort of directing the traffic of the kitchen.
Yes, he gets to do that in the later
that's
part.
what he gets to do. So I love that moment. So then Richie's time at Ever is sort of coming to an end. He even asks him for a job.
Yeah. And they're like,
we're not hiring. And he's sort of rejected because of that. And I think that's where his whole self-loathing kicks in again.
Yes.
And he's
so
rejected not really because of his work. It's just they're not hiring.
Yeah.
But he takes that as sort of a dig on him.
Yeah.
Then he calls Carmi.
Yes.
Frustrated. And it seems like we might get the old Richie again.
Yeah.
He goes in at Carmi. He's saying like, you punished me to send me to this place, but I showed you I still won. And Carmi is confused. What are you talking about? Like, that's not why I sent you to this place.
Yeah.
But Richie just won't hear it. He's irate and sort of back to the old Richie vibes. And we end Act 2 is sort of this low point. I love that scene. And then we go into Act 3. Again, as you mentioned before, we get a lot of the motifs of time. We see that he wakes up, he's back to sort of waking up late again.
Yeah.
But then we get that lovely moment, standout moment from the episode where he's with Olivia Colman as Chef Terry. I think she was actually nominated for an Emmy for this episode.
Yeah.
And sort of, can you describe that scene and sort of how it furthers Richie's change?
Yeah, I'll just want to say that like that moment where he calls Carmi in the car is like so disappointing because it's good as a writer, but it's so disappointing as a viewer because you're like, no, you just and you sang to Taylor Swift and like you did it, and then he calls Carmi and is like irate because he thinks he's being punished or that he's being rejected, again, and that's and then just a quick aside about. There's barely vulnerable conversations in The Bear, especially
lots
between the men.
Yes.
There's lots of yelling, and I thought it was interesting that like they had Fack in the background screwing up with the electricity, because there is a moment to have a very tender conversation between the two of them. But instead, you have Carmi very distracted by what Fack is doing and creating chaos, that like they're unable to connect in that moment. Because it could have been very easy for Carmi to say, I didn't send you there to punish you. I sent you there because I thought you could do it. And I believe in your potential. But we don't get that. We get yelling and invulnerability. And I think the conversation with Chef Terry just further illuminates, like, I think the love of process. Obviously, we come in, the scene is her peeling a mountain of mushrooms for no other reason but because it'll look nice on the plate. Like, there's no need to do it, but she's up very early by herself doing it. And I think, she tells him the story about, like, her first restaurant and how, the recession and everything collapsed. And then it's like, but she picked herself back up and she's doing it again because there is a love of service, there's a love of process, which I think also goes back to the forks, the shining of the forks, that we polish things with care because it is in service for someone else and they don't deserve a streaky fork or an unpeeled mushroom, I guess. And I think that just like further, Chef Terry is the final boss, which is a line that he says to Garrett. He says, where's the big boss? I don't want to talk to you, Yeah, where's that? And he doesn't, it's such a Karate Kid episode, oh my gosh. Like, you don't get there. So there's this saying that, like, when the student is ready, the master will appear. Yes. And, so we can, like, want and want and want, but, like, when you are ready, that moment will happen. And I think that's that beautiful moment that, like, in the end of the episode, he gets to meet the final boss, and Chef Terry's like not scary or anything like that. She's just like a woman who's like, yeah, I demand excellence at my restaurants and out of myself, and I think it just really crystallizes for Richie that, like, yeah, it's all about the love of process, and that's why we do it and continue to do it. And then she gives the story about her father and his journals, and he ended all of his she doesn't say it, but visual storytelling, but he ended all his journals with a saying, and he goes, well, what saying? And he looks up on the wall and it says, every second counts, and that's the end of the episode. And a masterpiece of writing.
It is. It's such a beautiful episode. And I love the character of Chef Terry, like you said. Yeah. Because she's the big boss, we're sort of expecting maybe some scary person. And especially with Carmi's past experiences with the boss. I forget the character's name, but that Joel McHale plays the scary, intimidating boss. And that's sort of who Carmi, unfortunately, sometimes chooses to emulate. But I think this scene is also important because it shows that excellence doesn't have to be, arrogant. It doesn't have to be harsh. It doesn't have to be mean. As a writer, I think a lot of showrunners could learn that. I have a Chef Terry sort of boss. I've had Chef Terry bosses, luckily, but there's a lot of Joel McHale type of bosses, and we sort of conflate being angry and anxiety-ridden with excellence, but you can be calm and still achieve great things, and that's sort of what I love about that episode.
That's a really astute point there, that, like, she is just so calm, and I like what perfect casting to do, Olivia Colman, just to be like, even in some of there's different episodes where there's flashbacks to Carmi's time with her, and that's in season 3, and like she demands excellence. It's not ready. It's like do it again, but it's not that like you are awful and you can't cook. It's just like it's not right.
Exactly.
And you can do better. And I do think that she runs a really tight ship without having to be
not have to yell.
Without being an asshole. I guess.
Yes, exactly. It is possible. So as you said, time is a recurring motif throughout. We keep seeing that alarm clock. We see that every second counts. Even Chef Terry says, it's never too late to start. That's what she says with that conversation with Richie, which are all sort of very cliche expressions when we think about it. But in the Bear, it feels so elevated and it doesn't come off as like cringe or corny. How do you think they were able to achieve that?
Olivia Colman. I mean, it like delivered from a very great actor, like they can elevate anything.
True.
But I think those themes, whether they're cliche or not, like just like the Coach K stuff, like teamwork. Yeah, obviously, leadership is about pushing people beyond their limits, but also being kind and caring for them when they do go beyond their limits. They're cliche for a reason because they kind of work.
Yeah.
And I think, for Richie, who's battling, I think age, and I think he mentions...
Yeah, he says, I'm 45
He says, I'm 45,
years old,
and there's a moment where he asks Garrett how old he is. And, I think we've all felt in a moment of like, gosh, I didn't think this would be my life at this age. And we think that we can't change because like that time has passed. And I think that line, it's never too late to start, just sort of reinforces again for Richie that like it's not too late for him to change or to grow or to be someone that not this person. Like he's capable of transformation if he wants it. It's never too late to start. And I think that's the whole thing with, Carmi's sort of relationship to time is that he always seems like he's running out of time. He has all these like grand ideas of what he should be as a chef and a Michelin star winning chef. And I feel like he's always feeling like he's racing against time to achieve those things, constantly talking about how things are a waste of time. And so, again, just the time motif for all of these characters is just really important, almost like an additional character to the show. But yeah.
I didn't think about that. So do you have any tips for sort of how writers can incorporate themes, motifs into TV? I think a lot of times we see that in films. I don't know if I see that many TV shows with sort of these
really strong
repeating motifs. And I think The Bear kind of achieves that cinematic quality because of these.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have to really know what your theme is to start. I think theme is like one of those really basic writer things that you learn in like English class, like theme. But it is really important, I think, to episodic television because whether your season has a specific theme or your episode has a specific theme, I think if you know what that is, you can build your motifs out of that. But if you kind of don't know what your theme is, then maybe you could be kind of at a loss. But I think it's important that writers just have to remember that we do work in a visual medium, and like things like repetition and whatnot. How do we convey our story as succinctly as possible without words or just through the visuals? I feel like I'm not giving good advice right now,
that's excellent advice.
I think that I think if I can remember correctly, something in school that is show don't tell, right? That's the basic thing, and we can have a character say, "I'm going to wake up early now," or how do we actually see it? A clock. Like it can be very simple, but it can still be very effective. Like as we've seen in a clock ticking down, or a wake up, and you're seeing the change. Every time you show that same thing, if repetition is the way you decide to do your motif.
No, yeah, I think that's perfect, especially the visuals. I think sometimes as writers, we can sort of get hung up on dialogue.
Oh, absolutely.
And you create very on-the-nose sort of scenes, but I always say if there's a way you can get the same information across visually instead of saying it, do it that way. Because it will be interesting, it'll probably add more subtext, it'll probably make your scenes deeper and more engaging to watch than just people sort of word vomiting everything. And that's not how people talk. Most people don't just say how they feel.
Exactly. Yeah, I think remembering that too is that like we often are hiding things like when we're having conversations, and I think script-wise, remembering that what's happening between the lines is just as important as the dialogue or your action lines. I think really remembering, like, reaction shots are a big way of storytelling. How someone looks at someone after they've said something might mean, like, you don't need the line because their look is giving it to you, or the twitch of their finger or anything like that. So, like, our medium is all encompassing, and so, like, you're leaving room for what the actors are going to do. You're leaving room for what the editors are going to do, because, like, as you pointed out, like, what we write is not always how it's edited, and editing is like the final storyteller and the editor, and so I think just like you kind of have to keep all of that in mind. And sometimes you can write it that way where, character raises an eyebrow or something like that. And you let the actor interpret what that is, or the director interpret what that eyebrow raise might mean. And so, I think just like it's important to remember that we're in a visual medium, and that, like, there's a lot of different components that are going to change what you have written in that script.
That's so true. I love everything you said. Love this episode of The Bear. We're going to say yes, chef.
Yes, chef.
To that episode of The Bear. So would you mind sticking around and answering a couple of questions about your career?
Absolutely.
The Young Musicians Foundation is a nonprofit located in South Central Los Angeles. Founded in 1952, their mission is to disrupt systems of inequity through music education, career pathways, and community engagement. YMF provides free arts classes in schools, at local events, and on site at their campus. To donate or learn more about their classes, visit ymf.org. Welcome back to the In the Cup podcast with Aeryn Michelle Williams. So, you're someone who's been able to write, across a variety of genres. Umbrella Academy, which is, I don't know what you call that, fantasy, sci-fi?
Yes.
Genre-based.
Yes.
HARLEM, which, is a comedy. What advice do you have to people who write in multiple genres? Because I think as writers, we're often told, stick to one lane, and you've proven that's not true.
Yeah, I can also say that it might be a little harder if you don't stick to one lane. Here's the thing. I think as a writer, especially if you're going to do episodic TV, you kind of, if you have a strong suit, great, you have a strong suit. But you're kind of a hired gun, right? So, like, you kind of need to be able to write everything. I am extremely ambitious, and so I aim to try to, like, I've pretty much written every genre except a Western or a musical, but that's just, I just haven't done it yet. But that's just me, because I just really enjoy writing. But I guess my advice is, like, just be who you are. Like, the industry will try to, like, when I did Umbrella Academy, suddenly I was being called a genre writer. And I was like, I don't think that's what I am at all. I want to write rom-coms, actually. But, I embrace it, and, like, because I do love genre, and, like, if it speaks to me, if the story speaks to me, then I will do it. But I could just kind of follow story first, and if the story moves you, then great, follow that. And, like, there's moments where, like, I'm a big student of the craft. I'm, like, very nerdy about writing. And so sometimes it's like, it's a genre I haven't tackled. I will just read scripts in that genre and go, like, well, how did they accomplish this moment that I'm trying to accomplish, right? Like, how do I get that tension right for this scene or something? And so I'll just, or like an action like sequence, like I'll just read a bunch of stuff of, like, other scripts that I or movies and stuff that I enjoy, and try to, like, emulate it and like put my own spin on it. And I feel like that's pretty much all writing is.
Yeah, it is.
But, like, I think if you have a specific thing that you like to write, then I think that's wonderful. And it honestly might be easier to get work that way. It's a little harder when it's like, well, gosh, she kind of does everything. But also, like, again, you don't have to be pigeonholed into any one thing.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Like, as being a writer on The Witcher, I'm getting all these calls to adapt, like, Wattpad novels and all of this genre stuff, and I do not identify as a genre writer.
Yeah.
Like, it's just one thing I happen to enjoy, but I would not say it's the main thing I enjoy. So
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. And just as long as you have, I think, samples and all these things, it's one thing to say, oh, I can write all of this. But like, as you said, you've written every type of script. So you have proof that you can write
I
all
know.
of these things.
And it has come in handy when like certain things like maybe outside of what I write show up as like an opportunity. And several times this has happened where it's like, well, I'm like gonna pitch a horror series and they're like, oh, but do you write horror? Actually, yes, I do. Like I do have, or like I particularly was like going after like a sports drama or sports something, and they were like, yeah, but have you written that? Actually, I have. Because like for me, it's all about character and story anyway, and like that's really the crux of it. And then the genre is just the casing in which like we're like the lens through which we're seeing that story. So for me, it's just like, okay, like it's really about, you know, what is the human story that we're telling here, and then, you know, the genre is just like how we're gonna showcase it. So
I agree. Love how you framed that. So you are someone that has written and directed several short films.
yeah, you did a deep dive. Huh?
I do my research. So how do you think these short films helped your career trajectory? Do you have any advice for making shorts, or did they not help? I don't know. Let's hear.
Okay, that's interesting. So I always wanted to direct, and when I got out to LA, I was obviously trying to follow the writing path as well, but I was like, well, no one's ever gonna hire me to direct if I don't have something to show. Same thing with like the writing, how I view that. And so I started doing shorts, and many of them were awful. They were just, you know, they're trial and error, right? Like, so you do something, oh, it was too big, I tried to do too much, and as you do it more, you learn to refine, and you learn to, it's the same, talk about process, you know, going back to, you know, Chef Terry, but like, it's really a big process. How have they helped my career? I wouldn't say it's a one-to-one, like I did this short and then I got this thing, but it's all about refining my skills. But I recently did a short that premiered this year that is doing great, a lot of great reception, that I'm using, you know, I'm doing film festivals and all that stuff, but definitely using as a calling card for directing. And what I can see in it is all of my growth. I can see every bit of, you know, the first film that I did all the way up to my time with Umbrella Academy or Harlem, and like, you know, going through production and like, and I just see it all, and I'm like, so I think like that's what it does, like the culmination of all of my experience leading to this particular film, and feeling like, wow, there's a ton of growth. And my mom said it too.
So you know it's true.
My mom was like, oh my God, you've grown so much.
Aww.
Like, because she was there for my first one, and that was like almost 10, 11 years ago.
Wow.
And, you know, now to have this one, it's like, oh, you can see that like the skills and the expertise just being really refined. And I hope it leads to more opportunities in directing, whether that's short form or, you know, episodic television, or eventually a feature is like what we're trying to get to. But, you know, you really just have to do it, because no one's ever just gonna like hand it to you and be like, hey, you can direct, right? And you have nothing to show for it, then no. So that's how I view my career and things like that.
Thank you so much. I think those will be helpful to people watching.
I hope so.
Thank you again for talking about The Bear. Honestly, rewatching this episode, you know, The Bear, they won all the Emmys.
Yeah.
And sometimes just like, oh man, give it to someone else.
Yeah, yeah.
And I hadn't watched season 2 since it originally aired. And when I rewatched this, I'm like, oh, this show is pretty good.
That is, wait. Okay, so no tea, no shade. I wasn't in love with season 1 of The Bear. Mm-hmm. I was kind of like, okay, a lot of yelling and stuff like that. Like, all right. Season 2 is when I really locked in. And then season 3, I know everybody has like, everyone was like, oh, it went downhill. Whatever. And I haven't seen season 4. But going back to watch it all, like when you don't have that 1.5 year wait between, like to watch it, I'm like, oh, no, this show is fucking good. Like, now they know what they're doing. Like, no, I see why they're running the Emmys. Like, it's a very good show. So kudos to that team over there on FX.
Yeah. Good job, Bear.
Yeah.
You're good. I mean, you don't need our validation.
I know, you have the Emmys.
You got plenty of
You have the
validation.
Emmys.
But thank you again.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks again to this episode's guest, Aeryn Williams, to the writer of The Bear, Forks, Alex Russell, and to the show creator, Christopher Storer. Thank you again for listening to this season of the In the Cut podcast. If you love the show, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. Leave a comment, share it with your friend, your mom, your dog, whoever would enjoy this show. Please share it. Your support is what allows us to keep making more episodes. If you'd like to sponsor or advertise with us, shoot us an email, podcast@inthecutla.org. And until next season, stay in the cut.